Today's guest is someone I'm meeting for the very first time, and I'm genuinely excited to learn about his journey. Adam Vardy is the master of the Yeppoon Masonic Lodge. He's also a pharmacist in Emu Park. Now, the Masonic Lodge is a community built on tradition, service, and connection, and I'm looking forward to discovering what's shaped your path, Adam, what drives you every day, and how your story weaves into the essence of our region, the Capricorn Coast and Rockhampton. Thank you so much for joining me.
Absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
No, it's very exciting to have someone on that I don't personally know yet. This is absolutely where the podcast is heading because I do want to find all of those amazing people throughout the region, Central Queensland, who do some really great stuff in our community. And, they do it quietly, they do it behind the scenes, and they just get stuff done. And you're one of those people, and you've come highly recommended to me. And very big thank you for giving me your time today.
Thank you so much. That's such a kind way to introduce.
You're very welcome. Before we get really stuck into it, though, I have one bit of an odd question for you. And that is, if you could be an expert in any obscure topic in the world, what would it be and why?
Now, I have to admit, this is a question that I had given a bit of thought beforehand. And I think that for me, an obscure topic that I would like to be an expert in is people's motivations and the reason that they do things. Now, that sounds like a bit of a cop-out of an answer, I guess. But the
No, not at
reason for that is that I think that it's particularly interesting, as you said before, to learn all of these things we know behind people. We often see what they do in society or in our interactions with them, but we often don't understand why they do those things. And I think to be able to have a better understanding of the why and what motivates people, it'd be such an interesting thing to be an expert in, more so to me than necessarily things like just science or the environment, which don't get me wrong, both are subjects that I find very fascinating. And as a pharmacist, it's something that leads me to my everyday work. But the motivations behind people and why they do what they do in the world is something that often we don't give much thought to and we don't give much time to study. So it's something I'm quite envious with what you do here. You get to experience and look into that. But it is such an underappreciated part of our world.
Absolutely agree. And yeah, as I was saying before I hit the recording button, I feel so lucky that I get to talk to people like this on the podcast. And yes, it's called Rockhampton with Nyree, but it really encompasses Central Queensland, the Capricorn Coast, a little bit out west, a little bit down south, a little bit up north. It's Central Queensland, it's just Rockhampton's a more catchier word.
Absolutely. I mean, it has to be marketable, right?
Yeah, that's it. That's it.
Nyree with the general central Queensland area doesn't have the same.
Yeah, that's it. So I guess that's a great segue really into my very first question, which is around, your influences and key moments and people in your life, and essentially what has shaped you to be the person that you are, not only in your career, but as someone who loves the Capricorn Coast and also with your community work with the Masonic Lodge.
It's a really complex question. I think a lot of what's shaped me, I guess, both professionally and I guess socially as well. I grew up on the Capricorn Coast. I went to Emu Park State School and Yeppoon High School. And during my time at Yeppoon High, I was given the opportunity to attend a Simon Science experience at the Central Queensland University. And basically, it was a day where, as grade 10 students, we're taken through a range of different science, professional stuff. And we looked at different ways of stimulating tissue with pharmaceuticals and exercise physiology stuff and a whole range of different things. And it was through that I sort of went, I'm really interested in pharmacology. So decided I'm going to work towards being a pharmacologist. And then doing a bit more research, it was like, well, pharmacology is a particularly difficult field to break into. Pharmacy has a lot more options. I'll try and gun for pharmacy. So I did that, graduated high school and went to University of Queensland to attend for the School of Pharmacy there. And during my degree, I went in fully intending to be a research-based pharmacist. I'm going to develop all these cool drugs that everybody sees. I'm going to break new ground and make innovations that way. And through the course of the 4-year degree, I discovered I actually hate that. I can't stand being in the lab. I love the solving problems and all of that sort of stuff, but I hate the paperwork and the proposals to ethics boards and the actual stuff that makes up 90% of that job. I discovered, no, I don't actually enjoy this. But what I did discover is I really enjoyed working with people and working on their health problems and learning about them and building rapport with them to come up with ways that we can help to fix something wrong with their life or assist them in an ailment that they have or something like that. So before I even finished university, I'd changed plans about 3 or 4 times. But thankfully, because of what I picked, that was all within scope. So I came out, and then through my early career as my internship, I was receiving I received a rural and regional scholarship through the Pharmacy Guild, which helped me to get through university, coming from a regional area and not having a ton of financial backing it was a massive help for me to be able to do that. So I didn't have to really work too much alongside university to be able to still pay rent and all that sort of stuff. So as a consequence of that, one of the requirements was like, it was strongly requested that we work for at least our internship in a regional area. And the opportunity came for me to be able to actually come back and work in my hometown of Emu Park as an intern, which was amazing. So the Pharmacy Guild thought that was a great win for them. I thought it was a great win for me. And so that was a bit of a promotional activity for them. But through that, I got brought in as a manager eventually in Emu Park after establishing a small pharmacy out at Bouldercombe with a colleague. And through that, when I first became a manager, they took us through life coaching stuff. And before that, I tended to be a very headstrong person. I can do it all myself. I don't need anybody's support. I wasn't very collaborative, which was a big flaw of my own, but it wasn't something I necessarily saw until that point in my life.
It can be an age thing too.
Absolutely. And I think that's the thing was if you tried to get me to do life coaching in my teen years, there is no way under this heaven that I would possibly contemplate such a thing. But because I was in my mid-20s by that point, it was definitely something I was open to. It was strongly encouraged as a freshly brought in member. I won't say it was enforced, but it was strongly
Strong encouragement, I hear.
that we engage with that. So I did. And I have to say, it has had a massive impact on my life. The training and life coaching we did with Soul Results through work really helped to open my eyes. And then as I was approached, one of my clients, I asked him about a ring that he wore, which is actually his Knights Templar signet ring. And when he mentioned, oh, it's my Knights Templar ring, I was like, oh, that's pretty neat. Such an interesting thing. It's a shame that something like that doesn't exist in the modern world. And he's like, what do you mean? Of course it does. I'm a Knights Templar. And I was like, what? What's that? Like, that's a real thing? It's like, yeah, Freemasons, and then you can become a Knights Templar eventually. If you so choose to. Freemasons is a real thing. Hang on, no way. And so I guess that was sort of how I was introduced almost serendipitously to Freemasonry. And at that point in my life, I was quite receptive to the concept of entering into this society, not really knowing a whole lot about what it was about. And that's something that I think is a common problem we encounter at the moment as Freemasons, is that exact experience that I had less than a decade ago, in that a lot of people don't realize that we are a real organization that does stuff much like Rotary or Lions or any of those other organizations, because there is a fair bit of traditional, I guess, we work in the background. We don't necessarily do a great job of promoting ourselves. And traditionally that, from what I'm told by the older members, didn't matter because there was enough communal knowledge of Freemasonry that was enough to maintain membership. But now, as times have shifted, it's not really the case anymore. We need to start growing more knowledge that, one, we actually exist, and two, what we do, that we have charitable and cooperative and all of that sort of stuff. And so as I took the journey through the different parts of Freemasonry and learning about it, it really tied in well with that life coaching and desire to help others, because that's exactly what underpins a lot of the Freemasonry stuff. A lot of what we do is to help each other as men to become better men, look at the things that we are proud of in ourselves and reinforce those, and look at things that we're proud of in others and try and emulate that, while looking to ourselves and to others the things that we do that we're not particularly proud of, we're not particularly fond of, and try and remedy those things and coach each other through that process. That's something that I think we lack a lot in society. And it was something that I had been given the opportunity to engage with through the life coaching stuff, but hadn't really found a applicable place in the real world, so to speak, where I
Mm,
could engage with those same sort of principles and sort of keep that ball rolling. Certainly with life coaching, you can go through all of those steps and all of those procedures and have a wonderful plan in place. And yes, okay, this is how I'm going to do my life for the next 5 years, but you never revisit it. It falls apart pretty quickly. So
mm,
having a structure that you can work within to be able to help sort of keep you a bit accountable as well. You've got a bunch of other men that are interested in what you're doing. And so you're
mhm,
talking to them about it. It's sort of like a help group there. You've got a wide range of different people with different lived experiences and different knowledge bases. And one of the best things that's made my pharmacies do well is not taking all of the stuff that I know as an individual and going, hey, this is the way forward, is listening to my team and going, how can we achieve this goal? And 9 times out of 10, the best idea comes from somewhere outside myself. So
mhm,
being able to take on those differing opinions and those different lived experiences, and it's amazing how much of those ideas and stuff that we can then incorporate into our own lives and grow as individuals and help ourselves so well. So that's sort of, I mean, that's a very long-winded way of saying, how I got to where I am, but
it
effectively,
Think you've articulated it perfectly for the modern day, to be honest. As mentioned before we started recording, this is all fairly new to me, as in recent months, what this movement is about. And it's linked to Scouts as well, which is very close to my heart. And, just understanding and unpacking. And I even had to reach out to some other members of the community to say, tell me about this. And the way you've just articulated it is essentially what our community needs. It's what our men need of all ages. So we need that accountability, that mateship, that coaching each other, mentoring each other. It doesn't need to be a formal relationship where you engage a specialist or dedicated life coach, because you actually have a community around you that can deliver that organically almost.
exactly. And a
Mm,
lot of the way that it's done through Freemasonry is there's a lot of the work, as we call it, is the secret part, I suppose. And there's symbols and different methods that we use to convey these moral lessons and moral ideologies. And I think a lot of the key behind that is not to necessarily dictate a way of living, so to speak, but to try and help to get the person starting to think about their own life, their own ideals, their own what they think of things, and sort of give them a framework to work within. And then the position that I guess it gives us as well is we have a sort of more informal part, which is where we are trying to bring more and more of the community into to experience, and in our festive boards as we call them. But basically, they're the get-togethers where we finish the lodge work and we sit down and we have a conversation with each other or people from the community and things like that. And they're a really good opportunity to be able to sit down with other people that you've never met before, knowing that they won't judge you harshly, that they will be kind because that's why they're there. One of the core underlying precepts of being a Freemason is that we, treat each other with brotherly love, respect, and truth, or relief and truth. So to give aid where we can. And that stuff is, I think, there are other places you can find it. I mentioned Rotary and Lions. I think some church societies are very similar in that they can provide that environment as well. But I
mm,
think it's important that we maintain as much as possible as diverse of a range of these places that we can go, and to sort of have the options so that people can find something that works with them. Much the same as if we go and see a psychologist. I've always said to clients, again, coming back to pharmacy is what I'm familiar with, but I can see a psychologist and go, "Oh, that person's amazing. They work so well to me. They can talk me through my problems and it's fantastic." But my
mm.
wife might go to that same psychologist and go, they're terrible. They'd like dictate to me what I should do. They're too aggressive and demanding and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, that's what I need, but that's not what she needs. And so
Yes.
having these options in the community so that people can find what works for them, I think is really important to maintain.
And if you don't mind me asking, how does somebody actually get involved with as a Freemason? So you've seen the ring on one of your customers. And I have been told in the past it was invitation only. Happy for you to dispel any myths that might be out there, how
Yeah.
people can get involved.
So there's something that some of the members at the moment are trying to promote in social media, which is to be one, ask one. And the idea, and I think one of the things that has hurt Freemasonry is that while it was known that it's a invitation thing, it traditionally was not something that the Freemason was allowed to solicit. So we aren't traditionally supposed to go, "Hey, George, are you interested in being a Freemason? Come along and see." Traditionally, it's been you ask me, how do I become a Freemason? And then this is how, you just ask me and we go through these steps and blah, blah, blah. And I think part of what has hurt our membership in over time is I need to be in this perception of it's invitation only. And therefore, I need to wait to be invited. And I think we've missed out on a lot of opportunities for people that might have been interested because they're waiting to be invited and we're waiting to be asked for an invitation. And it's created this sort of this sort of disharmony that I think has hurt the organization overall. But basically, the reason that they're trying to promote the to be one, ask one methodology is exactly that, to sort of encourage people to know. The idea of why Freemasons aren't allowed to solicit is we want people to come of their own free will and accord to come and join our organization and to come and be interested and invested in what we're doing. We don't want to be seen as an organization that is, I guess, chasing or harassing people to be members. We want people to be interested in joining our organization. And so that's what underpinned that tradition in an effort from the best of places not to be harassing people and to discourage our members from harassing the community so as not to alienate them. But as a consequence, we've almost created the opposite, where people are like, they don't even invite us. It's such a snobbish order of people that are, a bunch of people that aren't interested in, elitist even, aren't interested in having the general public as a member. And that's as far from the truth as could possibly be possible. We want people from all walks of life, whether that be farmers to professionals to like royalty has even been members of Freemasonry in the past. And we want to get as much of a spread of that part of society so that we can all share in our lived experiences together and help each other and create those connections that are you often wouldn't have the opportunity to create, much like what you've said, getting the opportunity to sit down with someone that you don't really know and learn about.
That's right, yes. And community and that sense of belonging is so important, more so today than ever before. We've never been more connected with each other, but we've also never had these rates of mental illness and loneliness. And, that's saying something in itself. And organizations such as, Freemasons, they can close that gap. There's so many of them out there. And you hit the nail on the head earlier when you said, there'll be something out there for everyone. And maybe it might not be, there's a lot of organizations, but you'll find the one that works for you and resonates with you. But the important thing is that you take that step and you find someone or an organization that has shared values.
Absolutely. And I think that's something that we're trying as an organization to improve our own side of, and that we're trying to open the opportunities for people to ask questions, for people to come and join and see what we do. We're trying to demystify as much as possible. There's certainly things in Freemasonry that we do intend to try and keep as a private or secret, for want of a better thing. But the reason for that is simply because that's supposed to be a journey for the person that's coming through to experience. And if we reveal all of that journey before the person's taken through it, it's the same as skipping to the end of a good book. You can know the ending before you know the middle. And ultimately, it kind of takes away from the experience, which is why some of the secrets that are in Freemasonry are there, is so that the person undertakes that journey as the book was intended to be read. And they can experience those contemplative moments, those introspections that are baked into how it's designed to be. This is a framework that's existed for hundreds of years.
Mm,
And it really hasn't changed that much, which is something that people often find jarring. But at the
mhm.
same time, it's something beautiful as well to be able to experience
Yeah.
a journey, a traditional journey that not many people, I guess, get given the opportunity to explore, as
Mm,
well as, the intent behind it. And additionally, there is also, as there is with any organization, there is some stuff that would be kept from the general community, in the same way that my business, I don't go around telling everybody, how much profit we make, or all of that sort of stuff, because that
yeah.
isn't really something that the general community needs to know. But
Mm,
I think as far as a lot of organizations go, with a lot of that sort of stuff, Freemasonry is trying to be quite transparent, because we're trying to counteract a lot of the secret society, or the sort of all of that sort of stuff, as much as possible. And so, in an effort to demystify and get rid of a lot of that misnomer of it's a secret society, rather than, I guess, what we're probably trying to show more is we're not a secret society per se. We're a society that has secrets. And that's a small but important distinction to me.
yeah, absolutely agree. And I don't think it's isolated to Freemasons. I mean, when I think about it, you probably have the most prominent reputation as a secret society. However, I'm involved in a lot of organizations around the community, not a lot, like just a handful. And they all have their quirks and their traditions and there are the elements that they're not public and they don't need to be, because it's what you get to experience when you're a member and you're on that journey and you're building those relationships and you're understanding how the organization that you've entered, which has been around for 50, 100, 600 years in your case, I think it was that I read. I hope that's right. You get to experience that, and it's not an obligation, giving your time to these organizations. Yes, it is time, but the benefits that you get as an individual, you build relationships with people that you generally wouldn't have in your friendship circle because you have shared values. And that's really, really special. So I hope that my question to you about what is this, I hope I've asked that on behalf of all of the community. So I've asked the question now, they can go and ask it too. If it's something that resonates with them, they can potentially come along and experience it if they're a young man or an older man, for example, in our community.
And I think it's important to remember too that while Freemasonry, in the sense of the Freemasons, is a fraternal order, so male only, there are a lot of orders that come along with Freemasonry, such as the Order of the Eastern Star, that
Mm,
are running alongside Freemasonry, achieving similar goals. We cooperate and work together, but that are open to women as well. And a lot of those orders that traditionally you needed to be connected to a Freemason to be able to attend, a lot of them now are starting to remove some of those requirements in an effort to be more appealing to, or not to be more appealing to, but to be available to more of the community, because we're
mm,
acknowledging that increasingly there is not enough people to be able to pull from if you restrict it exclusively to people that are, the families of Freemasons, because
mhm,
there's often not that opportunity in a person's life. Like my mother, our neighbor growing up was an Order of the Eastern Star, Lady of the Order of the Eastern Star. And she had for years been interested in having mum be a member, but they
mhm,
still at that stage had the requirement that you had to have a Freemason in the family. And I'm the
mm,
first person in my near family that is a Freemason. My father's recently joined, but a bit unusually the opposite way around to how it usually goes. And so as soon as our neighbor learned that I'd become a Freemason, she's like, Nat, would you like to be a lady of the OEF? And she's like, yeah, absolutely. I for years you've been hinting at it, but you've never asked. And she's like, because I couldn't, because there was that pre thing in the way. And so I
yeah.
think it's good that we're trying to grow and acknowledge some of the things that we need to do there to prevent having the barriers that don't really need to be in place.
And they may have served a purpose at one stage in the
Yeah,
journey of Freemasons and not so much in the modern day. So, and that's okay. And
exactly.
it's really
And
great that the organisation can recognise that and are transparent with the way they're shifting and moving. And making themselves more available to the community.
Exactly. And I think that's one of the things that I am quite proud of is that while the organization, we certainly haven't made changes quickly. We're quite an old organization, and as a consequence, we do tend to move with, some would call it poison grace, others would call it sluggish momentum. I'm not sure which camp I aspire to, but it is one of those things that when you've got hundreds of year old traditions, it does take a fair bit to go,
Mm,
well, what are the important things? And it's been regularly said that Freemasonry, because there's a lot of people that ask, why is it only a fraternity? Why will it never be? It's been regularly said it will never be anything other than a fraternity. And a lot of the reason behind that is because of the frameworks that underpin Freemasonry to try and make men better men is something that is geared specifically in that way. And
mm,
to open that up beyond that would really kind of break a lot of the work that's gone into to make those underlying processes that makes it currently work. And so beyond it just not being something that would work as far as our own mechanisms, being a Freemason is something that gives you access to orders of Freemasons around the globe. A lot of our membership, which is one of the things that I found fascinating when I first joined, have visited places from New York to go to the Freemasons Lodge there, which is actually in a skyscraper,
oh, wow.
to be able to go up and experience that environment there simply because you're a Freemason,
Mm,
and to be able to go, here is my credentials, test me as you will. And then once you've been tested, you're welcomed into a community of men in a completely different continent that
mm,
want to share with you the specific intricacies of how their particular lodge operates and the things that they do in that environment. And just by being a Freemason, you're carrying that sort of certification of, I'm a person that aspires to the same ideals as you, and I'm a good person, and
mm.
therefore I should be invited in. And you're welcomed anywhere where this is. And so I've heard stories from brothers that have gone to lodges on cruise ships, to different places that they've stopped off when they've gone on travels in England and Ireland and America and all of these different locations. And it's just a truly global thing, which is amazing. And I think one of the other challenges, to get back to what originally got me on this tangent, is that it's not just the local Freemasons lodges that are making that distinction. It's something that was decided long ago on a global scale. And so to be able to make significant adjustments to that, you would need to get a lot of organizations in agreement. And I don't think that that is something that is probably viable,
Mm.
which then again does lead us to some of the challenges of making innovation and evolving when you've got an agreement among such a large group can be such a challenge.
Absolutely. And, you know, I there's nothing wrong with it being an organization just for men.
Yeah.
I'm the biggest advocate for equality and equity, but I absolutely see the value in same-sex organizations. I see the value in same-sex schools through to organizations such as yours. So many different organizations are tailored to a particular sex, but can be open to both. Some have evolved over, a long time. Scouts come to mind, of course. I'm heavily involved in Scouts. I'm very thankful that girls are allowed in Scouts, but that's not a suitable arrangement in all
In all,
groups, and that's okay. It's
yes. Yeah.
absolutely okay.
And in the same token, I think it's important to have groups that are only open to women. In the same, like you say, it's important for both. Sometimes it's good for, men will say things amongst men that they wouldn't say amongst mixed company. And I'm
Mhm.
sure that's the same for women. My wife and I often have activities that we go to that are, she goes out with just her female friends and I'll go out with just my male friends. And that I think is an important thing as well. And that, we need to, as much as it is important at times to come together and be in those mixed environments, which is something that the lodges do encourage as well. We have days where we're all there together. I
Mhm.
think it is important to be able to provide support for each other in an environment where you can discuss things that you might not feel comfortable to discuss otherwise. And having that safe space to be able to do that in, I think is key.
Yes, absolutely agree. No, I love this. Thank you so much. So tell me a little bit about your the local group. So, and what it means to be the master of the Yeppoon Masonic Lodge.
So that's a great question. To be the master of the Yeppoon Masonic Lodge means that I guess I've been in the lodge for a while. You have to go through a bunch of stuff in the lodge rooms to progress to a point where you can be master of the lodge from a technical standpoint. From a practical standpoint, basically every year, ideally, lately every second year, we change who's in charge of the lodge. The idea being we want to create fresh ideas. We want to continue to keep the organization rolling and consistently giving as many people as could possibly want to the opportunity to lead. And I guess one of the main things that comes through from that is one, it gives us the opportunity to be the leader of an organization, which is a great life skill for all of us. I'm fortunate enough that I also run the pharmacies, and so I have the opportunity to lead from that, and I can take some of those skills learned there and apply them to the lodge. But I think it's also key to note that I learn a lot of stuff from managing the lodge that I can then apply to my business as well. And so it works both ways in that as sort of an educational tool, but also on a practical level, as the master of the lodge, there'll be different ideas that I bring that hopefully help to drive the organization forward. So we try and plan different things that we do in the community, for example. At the moment, Yeppoon Lodge, we do a fair bit of work to raise money for school bursaries for children leading from primary to secondary schooling in local schools. And the idea of those bursaries is that they support hardworking individuals, not necessarily with the highest grades, but one male and one female from each of these schools that we support to help them transition from primary to secondary schooling. And so different incentives like that is stuff that as a master mason, hopefully I help to bring those ideas to the lodge and to guide in where we can go with those sorts of philanthropic endeavors, as well as the practical side of what can we do to maintain our building? How can we go to market and find people that might be interested in using our space? So whether that be a charitable way of donating their space to help an organization where they need it, whether that be a practical thing of, we recently had the Electoral Commission use our building to host the balloting process. So that's something that we can do to support the lodge in that instance. We help the government out. The government pays us a fee for use of that space. And that's another thing that as the master of the lodge, you get the opportunity to help be a part of that process. So you're sort of developing a whole range of managerial skills, as well as being able to hopefully direct the influence in the community in a direction that is particularly interesting to that particular individual. And the beautiful thing about what I think is so great about the order is that when you take that role of being the master of the lodge for that year, all of the other members of that lodge commit to helping you to achieve your vision for that year. So you're given the support and the guidance and the counsel of this group of men who some of them are 3 times the age of others. And to be able to have, say, a 25-year-old leading a 75-year-old and the 75-year-old taking that on board and assisting, and the flip the other way as well, like having a person that's quite young taking a person that's person's quite old taking a person quite young and guiding them as well. And this is what I want to achieve. Okay, how can we help you in that? It's something that I think is particularly beautiful to see.
Sounds like an amazing experience. And because there is that shared set of values and you're working towards one goal and you've got that framework which supports the master, that sounds like an incredible thing to be a part of, whether you are the person in the hot seat, my
Yeah,
language, of course, for the
yeah.
year, or whether you're supporting the person who's taken on that role. The development opportunities for a person are significant by the sounds of it.
Yeah. And I
Mm.
think that's one of the things that I most enjoy about Freemasonry is if you don't ever have any interest in pursuing that, you're not expected to. It's not a requirement. But going through the journeys of the process to eventually become the master, if you're interested in doing that, in each of the steps along that path, you're given more skills and more knowledge and more experiences. And it's amazing how many of those things have helped me outside of the lodge rooms and outside of involvement with community groups in my own personal life at home, as well as in my professional life in
Mhm.
business as well.
No, that's such a journey. And what does it look like? And of course, if you can't answer, that's fine. But what does it look like when, your year is done and you're ready to take on a different role? Is it almost like a step back, or is it a step sideways, or is there more of a journey after that master role?
That's a great question. And as a person who hasn't experienced it, I can only give you the information as it's been laid before me thus
Mhm.
far. There certainly is other avenues to pursue, whether that be to continue and trying to go further as far as like the Grand Lodge, for example, and taking an involvement in them. There's also a lot of sister organizations that people join and participate in as well. But I think certainly for my intention, is not necessarily to take a back seat, but to take a different role in supporting a new person coming through with their new ideals and hoping to help grow their vision for what we want to see the lodges do in future. And there's a lot of effort at the moment being put into trying to promote the lodges so that more people are aware of it and demystifying that. But I think it's also something that's important for us to do is to look internally at our own structures and what we're doing currently. And the value proposition for people coming into Freemasonry, is it something that is worthwhile joining when you compare it with something like Lions or Rotary or any of those other organizations? And what can we do to really make sure that we're staying hopefully ahead of the game, but at least up to standard with the other organizations that are out there? Because while we can offer all of these great things for personal growth and development, it's important to acknowledge that not everybody is always after that. And sometimes the mateship and the other things that the orders can offer is something that we might forget in favor of focusing on personal development and growth. And depending on where a person's at in life, that might not be what they need at that time. So I guess that's sort of where I'm looking at trying to support in future, is to try and help continually review where we go with those sorts of things and hopefully be able to assist in adding value, one, to our incoming master when eventually that person decides to put their hand up, but also um, to the rest of our community in both Freemasonry and externally, whether that's through charitable ventures, whether that's through social ventures, or through marketing, or something like that. There certainly is no shortage of opportunities. It's just a
Mm.
matter of, you know, finding where I can put my time, which, having two young children and a wife at home, as well as running the two pharmacies, it certainly is a challenge to figure out where to put that attention. And I
Mm.
actually see it as quite a good opportunity once I'm stepping out of my car, in that someone else can figure out the day to day and the direction, and I can focus on putting my effort into helping them see that vision come to life.
No, well, that sounds great. I mean, a great answer considering it's not yet experienced. I very much look forward to seeing what you do after this particular role. And of course, from a distance, because I won't ever be a Freemason and that's absolutely okay. But I will stay curious. And yeah, it's something to look forward to, I think, when you're able to identify the things that you could be doing now, but don't quite have the capacity to because you are in that other role, but it is absolutely something you can park. And I guess, like, what comes to mind for me is if you were able to, which I have no doubt, but, attract new members and more people that would like to be involved in an organization like Freemasons, you might have those skills that then enter your lodge. You might have those marketing expertise, or you might have, yeah, obviously they'll be on a long journey or a short journey, whatever journey they choose to take, but they'll bring a whole different set of skills into your lodge. And, everyone contributes to a volunteer organization in their own unique way. And it's just about, yeah, understanding what that is and how do you best use it to suit the person, to suit the lodge, to suit the community.
And that's something that we're very fortunate at the moment. We have a lot of younger members coming in, especially through some of our sister lodges in the Rockhampton district, that these young people that are coming into the organization have different worldviews, different perspectives, and different skill sets. And one of the beautiful things about the order is that I think it's increasingly so now. We're looking to these members, I guess, sometimes even outside of what the traditional frameworks for them having the roles would be, and starting to go, hey, look, what is it that you're interested in seeing? And how can we help to develop that in so far as the masters of the different lodges are looking to our other members for what is it that you're looking at from Freemasonry and how can we help to achieve that? That's something that I think is increasingly becoming more of a focus for the order, certainly from my perspective anyway. And like I have a lot of, when I was in primary school, I received a bursary going from primary to secondary schooling from the Lions Club
Mhm.
to basically do exactly what we do with ours. So I have a vested interest in it, achieving that particular, supporting that, which was the venture that was there before I was a
Mhm.
member. But it's interesting to see, you know, we're talking now about different sponsorships of different community groups, be that scouts, be that other thing. And I love to be able to see people's input on, I'm interested in this, or I'm interested in helping to support this, or someone's approached me about this. What can we do to help? And I love that as an order, we're quite good, I think anyway, getting behind these different organizations and offering support, often from the shadows, I suppose, the back line. And I think that's probably the one thing that we really need to look at improving is maybe not necessarily doing it quite so quietly and quite so in the back seat, because otherwise people won't know we exist. That could quite possibly hurt us in the long run.
Yes, there's a bit of a not a trick, but there's a bit of an art to celebrating your success and what you can deliver in the community and the amazing work that you do and the other Freemasons and lodges locally. You know, it has to be celebrated. It has to be spoken about because I mean, the point of this podcast is to find those people doing amazing work in the community, you know, those organizations that keep our community heartbeat, you know, ticking. And bringing them to light essentially, but there's nothing wrong with you doing that as well, and doing it a little bit more proactively, a little bit more loudly than you have done to date. Yeah.
I think so, yeah. And I
Mm.
think that's an art too, something that we don't want to, as I guess was from some of those traditional things of not soliciting people. We don't
Mhm.
necessarily want to be shouting from the rooftops, look at how great we are. But you know, there's some things that the Freemasons organizations have done in the past. And for instance, at the moment in Townsville, the lodges up there provide accommodation for people suffering from leukemia and their families.
Mm.
And that's something that's often not spoken about, that's, you know, Freemasons as an order is something that's doing that. Microscope that I forget the name of that was pretty key for developing some advances in certain cancer therapies and other things that the Freemasons lodges funded to be able to organize for a particular research organization. And again, were I not a Freemason, I never would have known that that was something the
Mm.
Freemasons organization did. And so there's quite a lot of different things that I think we've done in the past, and we haven't necessarily sung from the rooftops that we've done it. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But
Mm.
at the same time, I think that there probably is a need to be a little bit more proud when we do help, to be able to say, hey, we'd like to help. And furthermore, hey, we did help, rather than just taking the back seat and doing the work at the end of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. And I recently had the absolute pleasure of having a group of Freemasons come and visit at a local scout group because they'd given us a very generous donation towards our scout park, Sione Park, which needs a lot of love and attention. And, you know, they'd heard the story and reached out to me proactively. And I was like, wow, okay, sure. I would absolutely love to accept that donation. You know, it will contribute to our park greatly. And being able to tell those stories, I don't even think it's about, you know, patting yourself on the back, really. It's telling the stories. How did we get here? Why did we do what we did? As a Freemason, you know, not myself, of course, but, you know, we fundraised by doing this and our
Yeah.
purpose was this and this is how we delivered this and this is how it made us feel because it's great to do community service work. We literally close the gaps that governments and schools, education, health, you name it, community organizations, not for profits, and, profit for purpose organizations, they are closing all of those gaps, and we've got to tell those stories.
Absolutely. I
Mm.
mean, I know as a person that was touched by one of those bursaries in my younger years, the amount of pressure that took off us as a family for me going from Emu Park Primary to Yeppoon High School. I mean, I think it was $300, which
Mm.
was basically the first year's book hire fees from the library.
Mm.
And I remember writing a letter, I say as I motion typing a letter to the Lions Club to say thank you and tell them what I did with the money and all of that sort of stuff. And to be able to see those stories now from
Mm.
students that write to us at the lodge doing the same thing, it just
Mm.
helps me to appreciate that someone back then did what we're doing now for these people moving forward.
Mm.
And it helps reinforce how appreciative I am for what might not have seemed like a big deal to some people, but to my family, that was a huge help. And that
Mm.
made a big difference to us. Well, hopefully we can do that for some people moving forward as well. And even if we can't touch everybody in the community with those, helping hands and with that assistance, the few people that we are able to help, it's still worth more than I think we're capable of expressing.
Absolutely. And it, like, you can take comfort in knowing that you may not ever know the full extent of how much you've helped a family. And you're very lucky, odd words, but very lucky in a sense where you've experienced that. However, I'd imagine it's your parents who really, really felt the full, generosity of that
Absolutely.
$300.
And that's the thing is that, like you say, I've got my lived experience of that. And it's something that has made an impact on my life. But as you say, like that would have made an impact on mum and dad. And it's something that I guess I hadn't really considered from that perspective either. Like it's left a mark on me some 20 years later. I've never thought about how much of an impact that's had on my parents as well. Because I mean, that would have been a strain and a struggle because at the end of the day, they were the ones that were actually outlaying the money for those things. As a 12-year-old child, I certainly wasn't going to be the one actually paying for it. But if it
Yes.
had an impact on me to the point of I remember the relief that it created, well, that must have been even more relief for my parents as well.
Yes, absolutely amazing. I want to go a little bit into, like, it's a choose your own adventure. It's a really prominent time in your life, whether it was a challenge or an absolutely momentous shout from the rooftops moment. But what's one thing that comes to mind that that's happened in any portion of your life at all that's helped to really shift your perspective or shape your perspective, and really craft the way that you approach life and the world?
Yeah, thanks. It's a great question. I had not thought about Um, I think probably one of the biggest things that shaped my life, um, and it's something that probably isn't very well known. When I was first finishing my internship as a pharmacist, we have to sit a series of exams. And I, at this point in my life, had never failed an exam in my, it was literally the last exam I was ever going to sit. And I was done. I was a registered pharmacist. We have to do continuing education every year, but in the grand scheme of things, I'm probably not going to fail that bad enough that they're going to deregister me. But the big pressure was on this one exam, and I failed. That was an oral examination, and I failed it. I then had to wait at that point 3 months before I had the opportunity to sit an exam again. So I had geared up an entire year. I had a position lined up at the pharmacy I was working in. Yep, cool. I passed this in November. In January, I'll take over as the, 2IC pharmacist. Sweet. I've got my, next 10 years ahead of me planned out. And
Mm.
then I get the results back and I failed. And all of a sudden, the position that I had lined up, they need a person that's filled. I've got to wait 2 more months. There's less hours available for me now. How do I handle this? So then January rolls around. I've got the opportunity to resit. I put in all of my applications. They take my money. Cool. I'm going to be sitting this exam. I've studied my ass off. Good. I've got this in the bag. And then all of my friends that are having to resit, because there was quite a few of us that failed in that particular year, it had I think it was about a 60% pass rate, more
Wow.
than half, but it's quite a high fail rate too. So there was quite a few of us that needed to reset, and they were all getting their exam dates. And I'm like, they took my money. Where's my exam date? I ended up contacting the pharmacy board, and they've gone, oh, yep, no, you didn't get your application in time. What do you mean? You took my money? But I assumed that meant you had received the form because the payment
Yeah.
details were on the same form. Like,
Mm.
anyway, it ended up being a typographical issue. And I was like,
Mm.
okay, well, that's fine. We've got that sorted out. When's my exam? Oh, no, the times have all been allocated. We're sorry, you'll have to wait until the next exam.
Oh, no.
Okay, cool. That was 6 months later.
Mhm.
So at that point, a mid-year in, so 6 months after I was supposed to have already been a pharmacist, supposed to under my grand plan. And I'm getting the opportunity to reset, absolutely smashed the exam, passed with flying colors. But then I'm now not an intern, so I don't have a position where I was working because they don't have a position available for a pharmacist. What am I going to do? And I was given the wonderful opportunity by my preceptor or the pharmacist in charge of me to help him start a pharmacy out of Bouldercombe. So I helped him set that place up and we got it running, and I managed that for him for about a year and then moved back into the 2IC position eventually at the store that I eventually became the owner of. During that time, I had my father that provided me a place to live. He gave me basically the ability to live in the house that I was renting off him, rent free, which was a great opportunity. Didn't
Mm.
have a lot of money that he could help me with, but he could help me with the place to stay,
Yeah.
which eventually, out of gratitude, I paid back the money that I would have owed him in rent because I couldn't possibly imagine not doing that. But it
Mm.
was a beautiful gesture that, was very kind of him to do. I got a great opportunity for life experience for how to manage failure, because I think that's something that we often take for granted. At the time, I was so focused on how everything was terrible and all of these opportunities had been taken away from me and how it was so unfair. But then afterwards, looking back on it, it's one of the best things that could have possibly happened to me, because having not failed an exam before that, I didn't know
Mm.
what failure was like. I never experienced failure like that, certainly not on that scale. And
Mm.
it was one of the best opportunities for me in the long run. And that now, if I have one of my interns that struggles or fails or doesn't pass something, I've got a anecdote that is relatable that I can go, I understand, I'll support you however I can, because
Mhm.
someone did that for me.
Mm.
um, Moving forward, I can look at any kind of failure that comes up in life that seems huge at the time and go, that seemed like the world was coming to an end then. And it didn't. And
Mm.
a mere 4 years later, I was buying in as a partner in a pharmacy in my hometown. 4 years after I thought that I had no future, everything was ended. And
Wow.
just to everything else by comparison, it's like, well, there's perspective for me,
Mhm.
like it just keeps me grounded. And to be able to look back and go, look, all of this stuff is going wrong. It couldn't possibly be worse. It's like, it could be. That was pretty bad. Is this as bad as that was?
Yeah.
I'll move. I'll get through it.
Mm.
And I think that's something we often don't appreciate in our lives, is the value of our failures. The time we learn the most is when we fail the hardest. And the way that we get up and deal with that failure is some of the greatest learning opportunities we will ever experience in our lives. And it's so easy to lose track of that truth simply because of all of the negativity that comes with failure. But I think it's important for us to remember failure is not an end point. It's a stop on a journey.
Yes, and it's almost sometimes a crossroads, it's a stop that you probably needed that you didn't realize you needed, and it's that point in time to go, "Okay, where to now?" But that is a monumental, I don't wanna say mistake because it's not a mistake, it's a monumental moment in your
Mhm.
life, which I can absolutely appreciate at the time would have felt like your world was crashing down. And
Absolutely.
to use it as you have and the perspective that it's given you and the benchmark for life, really. Is it
Exactly.
that bad? No, it's not.
Could be worse. It
Could be
almost
worse.
always could be worse.
Absolutely. So I'm really curious to know, this is a bit of a loaded question for you, but it is my last one, so I promise I'll be kind. But, what keeps driving you forward every day? keeps you going? You've 2 young kids, your wife, pharmacies that you own, master of the Yeppoon Lodge. What keeps you going? And the second part of the loaded question is, what advice would you give to the generation coming along after you, whether it be in the community or as a pharmacist or as someone just starting their Freemasonry journey? What would you share with them?
So, as far as what keeps me going, I recently watched a billionaire and he was having an interview, and someone said to him, what is the most important investment decision that you ever made? And he responded with something that just resonated with me so strongly. I can't remember what his name was, which is really awkward. But basically, he said to the interviewer, a lot of people, when they ask that question, they think I'm going to say it was investing in X stock or it was making this purchase or it was making this business deal. And he said, the most categorically important investment decision that I ever made in my life was who to marry. My wife is the most important decision that I have ever made because I can come home to her and I've got positivity, I've got structure, and I've got a firm foundation to be able to build anything in my life from everything that he'd been married for 64 years at this point, that everything that we've done in that 64 years, we've done together as a team through the hard, through the good, through the whatever. And I've been very blessed in my life to have a wife that is extraordinarily supportive, whom I love and adore almost as much as I love and adore my 2 daughters. And I think at the end of the day, a lot of what drives me to want to keep achieving and succeeding, I guess if you consider it that, and growing as a person and an individual, is I want to be in an environment where I'm providing a world that they want to live in, that I'm creating an environment where my daughters can be proud of their father and what I've achieved for them, and created an environment where they can learn and grow and explore the world in ways that maybe I didn't have the opportunity to. Not that my parents didn't try to, but just simply because we didn't have the means to experience those things. And I think I want to be a good husband for my wife. I absolutely do not succeed at a lot of the time, but I want to try to do my best for her and for them. And I guess that's probably the big thing for me, is because I want to create not just a world for us in our home life, but I want to create a work environment that I enjoy working in so that I can be a positive person for them. I want to create things in the community that I think are aspirational and work with groups of people that I think are amazing people to be around and support and grow and encourage all of those things, because I want to help to create a world that is, as corny as it sounds, a better place than it was when I came into it. And I think that's something that at the end of the day, it comes down to what I give for advice for other people moving forward in life is, if you work on something that you believe that you can be proud of, if you work on something that you find interesting or that you're passionate about, it doesn't feel like work. Going to work in pharmacy every day, there is challenges. Don't get me wrong. Almost every day there is new challenges, but I love doing that job because I'm helping people. I'm helping to grow their own life and their own health in whatever way I can. And it's something that I find interesting and fascinating and I'm passionate about. I enjoy learning about medicines and new treatments and things like that because it's interesting to me. So if you pursue something that is interesting, it is so much easier to learn than there are aspects of pharmacy that I find absolutely teeth-pullingly boring. And it is so hard to learn that. But if you can find the things in life that you find interesting, you will be amazed at how easy it is to engage with those. And I think that comes to, it's important to take that into all aspects of your life. If you have a home life that you enjoy, that you work towards and that is interesting to you, you have a social and community life through charity work or whatever it is that you're passionate about and you're engaged with, and you have a work that you're passionate and engaged with, it takes a lot to be able to get all 3 of those things to stuff that you're passionate and engaged with. But if you can have at least one of those, something that you're passionate and engaged with at any given time, it helps to build that energy that you need to be able to then hopefully pursue one of those other two areas and create the same value that you want to create in those spaces as well.
Absolutely agree. You've just nailed it. Yes. Thank you so much for giving me your time so generously. I'm very appreciative of your time, and I've learned even more about the Masonic Lodge and have an absolute respect for the traditions held there and, the longevity of the movement. And thank you for sharing what you're able to. And I really do encourage any blokes that are listening today to this episode, to reach out if it sounds like something that they might fulfill that spot that they're looking for, to definitely reach out and see if they can connect with one of the lodges locally wherever they are.
Yeah. And the
Mm.
lodges are often trying to have places where we can be reached from the community more easily. I believe they're having events at the heritage markets regularly to be able to create those environments where we can engage. We have a social media presence as well, which you can reach out through. And all of the lodges have contact details available for the secretaries for anybody that is interested. Always welcome to reach out, have people along and then show them through the lodges, explain what we're about. And if they're interested, then it's something that they can definitely pursue with us. And we welcome people from all walks of life.
Amazing. Thank you again. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I very selfishly have learnt so much, which keeps me going. So, yeah, thank you so much, Adam.
Thank you again.